Hello and welcome back to Live from Paris. It's time now for a look at all today's business news with Matthew Warren from our business desk. Hello, Matthew.
Hi, Lorna.
So we're going to start off with some technology stories, quite a few of those around this morning. And we're going to start with some big announcements from Microsoft.
Yes, that's right. Windows 8 was the big announcement, and a new interface for touch screens is one of the big changes in the new Windows 8 operating system. Now, why is Microsoft making all these changes? Well, it's seen its share of the operating system market, which used to dominate, of course, plummeting in recent years, and it's hoping that these changes, plus the launch of a new tablet computer on Friday, can turn things around.
They're calling it a reimagining of Windows, but it's a crunch moment for Microsoft too. 4 years ago, more than 70% of computers ran a version of Windows, according to research by tech analyst Forrester. This year, with Apple and Google dominating mobile computing, it's found on just 30%. Microsoft is hoping that Windows 8, a multi-platform operating system, will change that. It uses apps for the first time, bought from the new Windows Store. But catching up with rival Apple's iTunes will take time.
Developers are working fast and furiously to stock the shelves of our new store with great apps for the hundreds and millions of people who will get new Windows devices just in the next year.
Japanese consumers queued up for the midnight launch of Windows 8, but gave it mixed reviews.
The operating system itself seems user-friendly, but after testing it, I felt it was slightly clunky, so I don't know whether I'll use it for my tablet.
Microsoft also used the launch to show off its Surface tablet, where it'll try to gain ground in the crowded market dominated by Apple. Profits at Microsoft fell by 22% over the last quarter, albeit to a reasonably healthy figure of $4.4 billion. But investors at least weren't convinced by this launch. Microsoft's shares closed flat on Thursday.
Well, there's lots of other technology news around today as well. Apple sold fewer iPads than expected in the latest quarter. Sales of its tablet computer down 18%, and that's likely to be customers anticipating this week's launch of the new mini iPad. The company matched analysts' expectations with revenues of $36 billion.
Apple's biggest rival, Samsung, also gave its results. It's reported record quarterly profits of $7.4 billion. That's up 91% on a year earlier. Strong sales of the Galaxy range of phones helped boost their earnings.
And the telecoms equipment maker Ericsson reported profits down almost half. The Swedish company's been under pressure from slower spending by clients, but those results were better than analysts had expected. Third quarter profits came in at €427 million.
Right, well, let's move away now from technology and look at the markets. How are they doing this morning?
Lots of news in the markets today. We can take a look at European markets, which are all opening down today. And I can give you as well a bit of other news that's out. We've got Spanish unemployment data out. It's crept over 25% now, more than 1 in 4, well, around 1 in 4 out of work. There's also some contrasting data on how consumers are feeling in France and Germany. In Germany, consumer confidence was actually up to its highest level for 5 years in the most recent data, while here in France, data out this morning shows it dropping down on last month. Let's take a look as well at Asian markets. Those all closed in negative territory on Friday. The reason for that? Well, a few things going on. Weak housing data in the US and disappointing growth figures in South Korea.
Okay, well, moving back to here in France, bad news for France's biggest bank, a downgrade for them.
Yes, BNP Paribas, which is France's biggest bank, as you say, Lorna, got a downgrade from Standard & Poor's by 1 notch. And Standard & Poor's also changed the outlook to negative for 10 other French banks. Why? Well, it said difficult economic conditions in the Eurozone are exposing them to more risk.
Okay, and meanwhile, a different French bank's being investigated as part of an inquiry into banks fixing interest rates.
Yes, that's right. Not a great morning for French banks. This time it's the other great big one, Société Générale. Now, this inquiry is into LIBOR. You remember that's the rate that gets fixed, and there's been there's the rate that gets set for many interest rates around the world, and a number of banks are under investigation. It's now 16, and Société Générale is one of those. In fact, another 9 banks have been added to the list of 7 banks in total, and we can take a look at them there. They are from right around the world. This investigation being carried out by the New York and Connecticut Attorney Generals.
Okay, well, the World Bank, meanwhile, is saying that there's too much red tape and that's the cause of many of Africa's food problems.
That's right. It says that the continent just has too many regulations, which is really harming things in Africa. And in a report out this week, it says that removing those rules could help avoid food crises in the future.
Drop trade barriers and cut red tape to help African farmers. That's what the World Bank is urging the African Union to do on the eve of a major food and agriculture summit in Ethiopia. The bank says Africa is struggling to feed itself and that its reliance on food imports is set to increase over the coming years. The population of Africa is now 1 billion and demand for food will double by 2020, as will its food imports. Africa has 60% of the world's arable land but generates only 10% of global agricultural output. The World Bank blames that on an overabundance of regulations affecting trade on the continent.
So there's enormous potential to increase output. But to do that, African farmers need incentives to do that. And often the nearest market, the nearest large market for farmers is across a border. And constraints on trade, rules and regulations, very much hampering African farmers in getting their food across borders.
Greater productivity could also help prevent the many food shortages that afflict the continent, such as the ones that prompted riots in 2008. It would also be a major benefit to women who make up a majority of African farmers. But other challenges remain. African farmers regularly find themselves undercut by cheap surplus food imported from the European Union.
Well, Matthew, we're going to return to here in France now because unions and the government met with bosses of Peugeot Citroën on Thursday.
Yes, long-running story, of course, that we've been following. And, of course, the government earlier this week said it's prepared to offer a €7 billion lifeline in loan guarantees to struggling car maker Peugeot. But of course, it wants something in return, and what it wants is some change, really, to this plan to cut 8,000 jobs and close a major car plant north of Paris. The industry minister, Arnaud Montebourg, is particularly keen that groups like older workers, for example, are spared or at least helped out. There was one bright spot of news on Thursday. Peugeot says it's found a company able to take over that Aulnay-sous-Bois plant north of Paris that it wants to close. That would help save about 600 of those jobs.
Okay, well, finally, it is Friday today. Lots of people perhaps wanting to let off some steam at the end of the week. It seems people in Hong Kong, bankers in Hong Kong, have found a good way to do it.
Yes. Now, I wonder how we think this would go down here. This is bankers in Hong Kong, and this has become a bit of a regular fixture. In fact, I think it's the 6th or 7th year that a boxing match takes place between bankers. Plenty of people quite like to see bankers taking a few blows, I think, after
whether it be from each other or
events.
From other people.
Exactly. So the bankers, they meet up for this boxing match. And I can tell you as well that it's not just the men that take part, women as well. I think we can see a couple there getting involved in the boxing as well. Very popular event, all in a good cause as well. The proceeds for that go to children's charities in the area. Last year's event raised over $60,000.
Oh, so it's all in a good cause, as you say. It certainly looks like there's a lot of people going to those as well.
I don't think we'll be trying that though.
No, perhaps not quite at France 24 yet. Certainly not on set anyway. No. Thanks very much indeed, Matthew, for that look at today's business news. Well, that's all from us for now. Thanks for joining us, and do stay tuned. There's more news headlines coming up with Claire Murphy right after the international weather next here on Crossfire.